Welcome back to Channel. Jesus did not call God Father as a religious formality or poetic expression. He used this term because he had discovered something revolutionary about the nature of divine reality. When you truly understand what Jesus meant by calling God Father, your entire spiritual life transforms from struggle into natural unfolding. This is not theology. This is lived experience. Most people pray to a distant God somewhere in the sky, begging for help like orphans pleading with a stranger. But Jesus never begged. He never pleaded. He spoke with the confidence of a son who knows his Father's nature completely. This was not arrogance, but recognition of an eternal relationship that already existed before time began. The word Father in Jesus' consciousness meant source, origin, and substance. Just as a father gives his own life and nature to his child, God gives his own being to you. You are not separate from this source-seeking connection. You are the expression of it, living and breathing through divine inheritance right now in this very moment. When Jesus said, "I and my Father are one," he was not claiming something unique to himself alone. He was revealing the truth about every human being's relationship with God. This oneness is not something you achieve through years of spiritual practice. It is the foundation of your existence that you must simply recognize and accept as already complete. Think about this carefully for a moment. A wave is not separate from the ocean trying to become oceanic. It already is ocean temporarily expressing in wave form. You are not a human being trying to reach God. You are God's own life temporarily expressing in human form. This is what Father means in mystical Christianity, and it changes everything. Joel Goldsmith taught that understanding this father-child relationship dissolves the root cause of all suffering, which is the belief in separation. When you live from the consciousness that God is your actual source and substance, you stop begging and start receiving. You stop efforting and start allowing the divine nature to flow through you naturally and effortlessly. The practical power of this realization becomes clear when you face life's challenges. A person who thinks God is distant prays, "Please God, help me with this problem." But someone who understands the father relationship prays differently. They recognize that divine wisdom is already present within them as their true nature and inheritance, not something external they must acquire. This is not positive thinking or affirmation. This is recognition of reality. When Jesus performed healings, he did not beg God to intervene from some distant heaven. He acknowledged the Father's presence right there in the situation. He knew that where God is, wholeness must be. Where the Father is, the child's needs are already met by the nature of the relationship itself. You have been taught to seek God's help as if you were separated from divine supply. But a father's resources are his child's inheritance, not through pleading, not through worthiness, through the simple fact of relationship. When you grasp this, your prayer life transforms from begging into recognition, from anxious effort into restful knowing and peaceful receiving. Here is the secret that changes everything about your spiritual life. When you pray, acknowledging God as Father in the way Jesus meant it, you are not trying to get God to do something for you. You are remembering what is already true. Divine life is already flowing. Divine wisdom is already present. Divine substance is already expressing as your being right here, right now. This understanding removes the burden of spiritual striving that exhausts so many seekers. You are not climbing a ladder to reach God in some distant heaven. You are awakening to the fact that you have never been separate from your source. Just as a child does not become the father's offspring through effort, but simply is by nature of birth, you are God's expression by the very nature of existence. Joel Goldsmith called this the secret of secrets in mystical Christianity. When this realization dawns in your consciousness, healing happens naturally. Supply appears effortlessly. Relationships harmonize spontaneously, not because you manipulated God into helping you, but because you remembered the truth of who you are as the Father's expression in human form walking this earth. Let me share what happened to a woman named Margaret, who discovered this truth after 30 years of desperate prayer. She had prayed every single day for healing from chronic pain, begging God to take away her suffering. She attended every healing service, read every spiritual book, consulted every practitioner, yet nothing changed. She felt completely abandoned by God and utterly hopeless. Then she encountered Joel Goldsmith's teaching about the father relationship. At first, she resisted strongly. How could she not be separate from God when her body screamed with pain every moment? But something in the teaching touched a deep place within her consciousness. She began to sit quietly each morning, not asking for healing, but simply acknowledging God as her actual source in life. For 3 weeks, nothing seemed to happen in her physical condition. Then one morning, during her quiet time, something shifted in her awareness. She felt a presence not outside her, but as her very being. In that moment, she understood what Jesus meant. God was not a distant helper, but her own life source. Within 2 months, her pain began diminishing gradually. Within 6 months, it was completely gone. Margaret's healing was not instantaneous, and that is important to understand clearly. The recognition of the father relationship does not always produce immediate physical results, but it produces an immediate shift in consciousness that then gradually manifests in your outer experience over time. This is realistic spirituality, not magical thinking that promises instant miracles. Another man named Thomas struggled with business failure for years. He prayed constantly for God to send customers, improve sales, solve his financial crisis that was destroying his family's security. His prayers felt like shouting into an empty void. When he learned about the father principle from Joel Goldsmith's writings, he began practicing differently. Instead of begging for business success, Thomas spent time each day recognizing that divine intelligence was his true mind, that infinite supply was his actual substance. He stopped treating God like a cosmic vending machine and started living from the consciousness of already being connected to his source. Gradually, over 8 months, opportunities appeared, connections formed naturally, and his business stabilized completely. These stories reveal something crucial about how the father relationship works in practical life. The transformation is consciousness first, condition second. When you truly understand that God is your father in the mystical sense Jesus meant, your inner state changes immediately. Your outer circumstances then begin to reflect that inner change over time, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly. This is why Jesus could say, "Your Father knows what you need before you ask Him." A good father anticipates the needs of his children without being told. Divine intelligence, being your actual source, already knows every requirement of your being. The issue is never getting God to help you. The issue is recognizing the help that is already present in the father relationship. Joel Goldsmith emphasized that this recognition must become your habitual consciousness, not just an occasional thought when you remember. When facing any challenge, you must train yourself to remember. God is not somewhere else from whom I need help. God is my very life source, and divine wisdom is already operating as my intelligence right now. This shift from separation to recognition changes everything. The deepest aspect of understanding God as Father is recognizing that you inherit divine nature, not human limitation. A child inherits the qualities of their father naturally. If God is your true Father, then divine qualities are your actual nature. Peace is not something you must acquire through struggle. It is your inheritance. Wisdom is not something you lack. It is your birthright as God's expression. When this realization becomes your living consciousness, you stop living from fear and limitation. You begin to live from the assurance that everything you truly need is already present in your divine inheritance. Not because you are special or chosen, but because this is the truth about every human being who awakens to their real relationship with the source of all life. This is not arrogance or spiritual pride that elevates you above others. This is simply recognizing what Jesus recognized and what he tried to teach all of humanity. You are not orphans in the universe begging a distant deity for scraps. You are the very expression of divine life itself, living and moving in temporary human form with full access to your Father's infinite nature. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings. Subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom and comment what healing journey resonated most with you. Now, let me give you a practical technique that makes this father relationship real in your daily experience. Joel Goldsmith called it the practice of the presence. Every morning before your day begins, sit quietly for 10 to 15 minutes. Do not ask God for anything. Simply acknowledge the truth. God is my life right now, my breath, my consciousness, my very being in this moment. As thoughts of problems arise, do not fight them or try to suppress them. Gently return to the recognition. My Father is present here as my true nature. Whatever appears as challenge or lack, the Father's presence is the reality, not somewhere in the future, not dependent on my worthiness or spiritual performance. Present now as the substance of my being. Practice this daily for at least 30 days without judging whether it is working. You are not trying to make God present. You are training your awareness to recognize what is already true. This is not meditation in the Eastern sense. This is recognition of reality. You are remembering who you are and who God is as your actual source in life. This daily practice rewires your consciousness from separation to union. Another technique Joel taught is what he called releasing the burden. Throughout your day, when you feel yourself straining, struggling, or anxious about something, pause for a moment. take a conscious breath, then silently say to yourself, "My Father is present here. Divine intelligence is operating in this situation right now." Feel yourself releasing the weight of trying to control outcomes through human will. This practice is powerful because it interrupts the pattern of orphan consciousness that creates suffering. When you believe you are separate from God, you feel you must control everything through human effort alone. But when you remember the Father relationship, you relax into allowing divine intelligence to operate through you and the situation. This is not passivity or laziness. This is active recognition of reality. A teacher named Elizabeth used this technique when facing a difficult conversation with her school principal about a sensitive issue. Instead of rehearsing arguments and strategies in her mind, she spent 10 minutes acknowledging the Father's presence in the situation. The conversation unfolded with unexpected grace. Solutions appeared that neither person had planned. This is how recognition of the Father relationship works practically in daily life. Here is a third practice that deepens your realization of the Father relationship. When you look at other people, especially those who challenge you or irritate you, practice seeing them as expressions of the same Father. This does not mean approving of harmful behavior. It means recognizing that beneath all human appearances, divine life is the substance of every being without exception. Goldsmith taught that when you recognize God as the Father of all, you cannot remain in judgment or separation from others. You begin to see that the same source that lives as you lives as everyone, even those who seem completely different from you. This shifts your relationships from conflict to compassion, from judgment to understanding, not overnight, but gradually. As this consciousness becomes habitual, a businessman named Robert practiced this with a competitor who had been undermining his work for years, spreading rumors and stealing clients. Instead of reacting with anger and revenge, Robert spent time each morning acknowledging that the Father's life expressed as both of them. Over several months, his feelings toward this person softened naturally. Eventually, they had a conversation that cleared the air completely. The competitor became an ally. The final technique is what Joel called living from the invisible. Train yourself to recognize that the Father's presence is the invisible reality behind all visible forms. When you look at your bank account, see beyond the numbers to the infinite substance that is your true source. When you look at your body, see beyond the appearance to the divine life that animates it. This is not denying what appears in your experience. This is recognizing what is real beyond appearances. The visible world is effect. The invisible Father is cause. When you live from consciousness of the cause rather than constantly reacting to effects, you begin to experience life from a completely different dimension. Problems that once overwhelmed you lose their power over your peace. Practice this daily with whatever concerns you most. Look at whatever troubles you and ask yourself, what is the Father's presence in this situation? What is the invisible reality here beneath the appearance? As you train your consciousness to see beyond appearances to the divine source, your experience begins to shift gradually but powerfully. This is not magical thinking. This is learning to live from the consciousness that Jesus lived from. Now let me address the challenges you will face in living this truth, because challenges will come. The first and most common obstacle is doubt. After years of believing you are separate from God, your mind will resist this new understanding. You will practice recognizing the Father relationship one moment, then fall back into orphan consciousness the next. This is completely normal. Do not judge yourself harshly. Goldsmith himself said it took him years to stabilize in this consciousness. After his initial awakening, the pattern of separation is deeply grooved in human thinking. You are not trying to create a new relationship with God. You are uncovering what has always been true. This uncovering happens gradually with many moments of forgetting and remembering. Be patient with yourself in this process of transformation. When doubt arises, do not fight it with force or condemnation of yourself. Simply return to the practice quietly. Acknowledge silently whether I feel it or not. God is my life right now. The Father is present as my being. You are not trying to manufacture a feeling. You are stating truth until your consciousness catches up with reality. This requires persistence, not perfection. This requires commitment, not flawless performance. The second major challenge is when circumstances seem to contradict this truth dramatically. Your body may be sick, your finances may be depleted, your relationships may be broken. In these moments, everything in your human mind screams that you are indeed separate from God and divine help is not present. This is the critical moment of practice when recognition matters most. Joel taught that this is exactly when recognition has its greatest power. Not because recognition makes the problem disappear instantly like magic, but because recognition keeps you connected to the source of all healing and supply. When you acknowledge the Father's presence in the midst of challenging appearances, you are opening your consciousness to receive what is already flowing toward you from the invisible realm. A woman named Sarah faced foreclosure on her home with nowhere to turn. Every day the situation looked worse and more hopeless. But she practiced acknowledging the Father as her true source regardless of appearances. She did not deny the challenge. She simply refused to let the appearance cut her off from recognition of divine supply. 3 weeks before the foreclosure deadline, an unexpected solution appeared through a series of events no one could have predicted or planned. The third obstacle is the feeling that this teaching is too simple to work with real problems. Your rational mind may say just recognizing God as Father cannot possibly solve actual problems. You need action plans, strategies, human solutions, practical steps. This doubt dismisses the power of consciousness to shape experience, which is the foundation of all spiritual healing throughout history. Here is what Joel understood that most people miss completely. Consciousness is cause. Your outer world is effect. When you change your consciousness from separation to recognition of the Father relationship, you are working at the level of cause. Effects must follow, though not always in the time frame or manner your human mind expects or demands. This requires trust in an invisible process. A doctor named Michael struggled with this concept initially. His medical training emphasized physical causes and effects exclusively. How could simply recognizing God as Father heal actual diseases with real symptoms? Then he witnessed patients who practiced this consciousness recovering while others with better treatments did not. Over time, he came to respect the power of consciousness while still applying medical knowledge wisely. The two approaches worked together powerfully. The fourth challenge is maintaining this consciousness when others around you live from fear and separation constantly. Your family may think you are being unrealistic and foolish. Your friends may tell you to face facts and stop with spiritual fantasies. The collective consciousness of humanity pulls strongly towards separation, struggle, and limitation. Standing in the truth of the Father relationship requires inner strength and conviction. Joel Goldsmith was clear about this reality. You cannot wait for others to validate your spiritual realization before you commit to it. You must be willing to stand alone in your recognition of truth, even when appearances and popular opinion argue against it loudly. This does not mean being rigid or preachy with others. It means quietly maintaining your inner connection regardless of outer pressures or criticism. Find others who understand this consciousness if possible. Join a spiritual community that practices these principles. Read Joel's books regularly to reinforce your understanding against collective doubt. You need support on this path because you are swimming against the tide of mass human thinking. This is not weakness. This is wisdom about how consciousness works and what it takes to maintain elevated awareness in a fear-based world. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content. Subscribe for advanced spiritual practices and comment which obstacle are you ready to transform now. Now let me show you how this Father consciousness integrates into advanced areas of life beyond basic healing. Consider the realm of creative work. When you understand that divine intelligence is your actual mind, your approach to creativity transforms completely. You stop trying to squeeze ideas from your limited human thinking. You relax into allowing infinite creativity to flow through you as your true nature. An artist named Claire practiced this for 6 months without forcing results. Instead of staring at blank canvases in frustration and self-judgment, she would sit quietly first, acknowledging that the Father's infinite creativity was her true nature already present. Then she would pick up her brush and allow whatever wanted to express to come through without controlling it. Her work deepened dramatically in quality and originality. Galleries that had rejected her work before now sought her out eagerly. This is not about getting God to make you more creative through divine intervention. This is about recognizing that creativity itself is a divine quality that you inherit through your relationship with the infinite source. When you live from this recognition, you stop blocking the flow with human anxiety and effort. You become a clear channel for what already wants to express through you. In the realm of healing, advanced practice means recognizing the Father's presence, not just for yourself, but for others who suffer. Joel Goldsmith taught that when you see someone suffering, you can practice recognition on their behalf silently. Not trying to fix them with your human will, but silently acknowledging that the Father's wholeness is their true nature right now, regardless of what appears in their condition. A nurse named Patricia used this approach with her patients throughout her workday. As she cared for them physically, she silently recognized their divine nature without speaking about it. She did not tell them what she was doing spiritually. She simply held the consciousness of truth while performing her medical duties competently. Several doctors noticed that patients under Patricia's care recovered faster with fewer complications than expected. Consciousness is contagious in ways we do not fully understand. This does not mean you can heal everyone you encounter regardless of their receptivity. It means you can hold the consciousness of truth that supports healing. The person must be receptive at some level for the healing to manifest in their experience. But your recognition creates an atmosphere where their own awareness of the Father relationship can awaken more easily. This is spiritual service at its highest level. In relationships, advanced practice means recognizing the Father as the substance of both yourself and the other person simultaneously. This dissolves the illusion that you are two separate beings competing for limited love, attention, or resources. When you see that the same infinite source lives as both of you, the entire dynamic shifts from transaction to communion, from taking to sharing. A couple named James and Linda transformed their marriage through this practice after years of conflict. For 20 years, they had struggled with conflict and disconnection that threatened divorce. When they learned about the Father principle together, they began sitting together each morning, silently acknowledging that divine love was the substance of both of them, not trying to fix each other or change behaviors, simply recognizing truth. Over 9 months, their relationship underwent profound change that surprised them both. The small irritations that once triggered arguments lost their power completely. They began responding to each other from a deeper place of understanding. This was not manipulation or positive thinking techniques. This was two people learning to see beyond human personalities to the divine reality expressing as both. Their marriage became a spiritual practice, not just a human arrangement. In the realm of purpose and calling, living from Father consciousness means trusting that divine intelligence knows the perfect unfoldment of your life better than you do. You stop forcing outcomes based on human ambition or fear of missing out. You begin asking, what wants to express through me as God's expression? This is a completely different orientation toward life and work that transforms everything. A corporate executive named David felt empty despite tremendous career success and financial abundance. When he discovered Joel's teaching about the Father relationship, he began practicing recognition of divine purpose each morning before work. He did not quit his job immediately or make dramatic changes. He simply asked to be shown what wanted to express through him as the Father's outlet in human form. Over 18 months, opportunities arose that he never could have planned with human strategy. He transitioned into work that fed his soul while still using his skills and experience. This was not about abandoning responsibility or becoming impractical. This was about aligning with a deeper intelligence than his human mind could access alone. When you trust the Father as your true source, your life unfolds with a grace that human planning cannot achieve. As you continue deepening into this consciousness over time, you will discover something extraordinary about your spiritual journey. The entire spiritual journey you thought you were on transforms in meaning. You realize you were never actually separated from God, never actually needed to find your way back home through effort. You were always the Father's expression. You were always living in divine presence. You had simply forgotten this truth. This realization brings immense relief to the spiritual seeker who has been striving. You have been carrying a burden that was never real. The burden of separation, of needing to become worthy, of having to achieve spiritual enlightenment through discipline. All of it falls away when you recognize what has always been true. You are already the Father's beloved expression, already whole, already connected to infinite source. Joel Goldsmith called this the great release that ends spiritual seeking. It is not that something new happens to you. It is that you stop living from the illusion of separation that created the search. When this happens, joy arises naturally in your being, not because your circumstances suddenly become perfect, but because you realize you have never been alone, never been lacking, never been separate from the source of all life and good. From this consciousness, you begin to live with a different quality of presence in everything you do. You still engage with daily life, still face challenges, still participate fully in the human experience. But there is a depth beneath it all, a knowing that cannot be shaken by appearances. You know who you are. You know whose you are. You know the Father as your eternal source and being. This does not make you passive or detached from life's activities. If anything, you become more engaged with life, more effective in what you do because you are no longer acting from fear or lack. You are acting from fullness, from recognition of infinite resource, from trust in divine intelligence operating through you. This makes you a powerful force for good in the world around you. People sense something different about you, though they may not be able to name what they perceive. You carry a peace that is not dependent on circumstances staying favorable. You demonstrate a confidence that is not arrogance, but recognition of truth about your source. You become living proof that the Father relationship Jesus spoke about is not ancient history, but present reality available to anyone who recognizes it sincerely. The ultimate freedom that comes from this realization is freedom from the tyranny of circumstance that controls most lives. External conditions no longer determine your inner state of peace and joy. You have discovered that your true life, your real source, your actual being, exists in the dimension of divine consciousness, not in the changing world of form. This gives you unshakable foundation for living. You may still prefer certain circumstances over others naturally. You may still work to improve conditions in your life practically, but your peace, your joy, your sense of wholeness no longer depend on getting circumstances arranged just right. You have found the kingdom within, that Jesus spoke about, the consciousness of the Father's presence that remains constant regardless of what appears in your external world. This is what Joel Goldsmith lived and taught through decades of spiritual practice. This is what Jesus demonstrated and invited all humanity to discover for themselves. Not a religion to join, not a doctrine to believe, but a reality to recognize and live from. God is your Father. Not in the fairy tale sense, not in the religious sense, but in the mystical sense of source, substance, and being. When you truly understand this, everything changes. So where does this leave you now? At the end of this teaching, you have received these teachings about the Father relationship. You understand intellectually what Jesus meant and what Joel Goldsmith taught for decades. But understanding is just the beginning of transformation. Now comes the practice. Now comes the daily recognition. Now comes the persistent remembering until this consciousness becomes your natural state of being. Start today with simple commitment. Begin this morning by sitting quietly for 15 minutes before your day unfolds. Put aside all asking, all wanting, all trying to get God to do something for you. Simply recognize in silence, God is my Father. Divine life is my actual being. Infinite intelligence is my true mind. The source of all good is present now as my substance. Feel what happens when you rest in this truth. Continue this practice daily for the next 3 months without judging results or looking for proof. You are not trying to achieve something external. You are recognizing what is already true. Some days you will feel deep connection. Other days you will feel nothing at all. Keep practicing regardless of feelings. The truth does not depend on your emotions. God is your Father whether you feel it or not. Recognition makes it real in your experience over time. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings and comment, I am transformed, to confirm your new path. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.